This is day one of what we'll be doing for the next week, the next 5 days. We're gonna go through these 5 characters, starting with Acolyte right now. We'll go Acolyte, Rogue, whatever this guy's called, Sentinel, and Mage. And we're gonna learn like the meta leveling strat for each of them. So this is probably the one that requires the least amount of research on my part. But before we get started, we'll look through the planner here. I'm gonna put this in chat if you want to see it as well. So we'll be playing a probably not a Necromancer, probably leveling as a Lich. We'll have a couple points here in Wandering Spirits. We'll have Spectral Putrescence. This is probably the first node that we pick up. So Wandering Spirits are like the green boys. It has no cast time. You just like cast it as you walk. If you want to use the Numlock trick, this is the perfect kind of skill to use that along with. So Spectral Putrescence over here on the right side. 1, 2, 3. This makes it so that they shoot a little projectile. And we'll be scaling like spell damage, poison damage, adaptive damage on the base of the wand is going to be very important for us because the implicit on the wand is kind of where all of your flat damage comes from. So any kind of like cast speed, spell damage, damage over time, poison damage, anything like that is going to be beneficial to us. So this will make it so that it shoots a little projectile, and it makes it so that our single target damage is omega strong. So for single target, we're going to have Spirit Plague, which again is just like incredibly comfortable. We have a global increased damage over time from Pestilence, and this is like, it kind of juices up whatever other skill you're using. So even though Wandering Spirits looks like a minion, it's still your damage. So Spirit Plague is still going to increase the damage that Wandering Spirits does. And it's also per cast. So if we just like, if we have cast speed and we cast this 10 times, all of a sudden we have 750% increased damage, which is kind of nuts. We have every 1 Spirit Plague applies 2 casts of poison, or 2 stacks of poison, which is super nice. It's kind of like 200% poison chance, right? We have some increased duration, some mana efficiency, and then what's this? Cast speed and last longer. All right, you got it, coach. So these are easy peasy. What's the third skill we're using today? Volatile Zombie. Well, I actually haven't used Volatile Zombie before, so I guess we'll go find out. What is this? So zombies deal more damage, have more movement speed. Multiplicative, sure. Summon zombies faster. Are we not doing the vomit stuff? Zombies will now vomit on enemies. Okay, so there's no mom spaghetti in this setup. Zombies move faster. Zombies deal more damage, and zombies' health decay is slower. Sure. And then what else? Zombies have increased chance to stun enemies. Just 1, so we're traveling through this. And we're doing this presumably to get up here. You summon additional zombies per cast, but they cost more mana and have additional cooldown. Okay, so we just have more zombies. And then hits deal more damage against bosses and rare enemies. Sure, okay. The zombies are fantastic. I've never used zombies before. Like, these first 2 are like easy peasy. But yeah, the Volatile Zombie, I've never actually used it. So let's take a look at this. We have a wand. We're looking for cast speed. A+. Physical res, stuff, movement speed. Wow. Man, this is some A+ leveling gear that we have here. Let's take a look at at the mastery. We have 30 points in Lich and no points in Necromancer. Okay. Looks like we're going to actually make ourselves a Necromancer, which will be nice because as an output to this, I don't have a Necromancer, so if I want one someday, we can just have this. Let's see. Increased damage here, armor, stuff, intelligence, necrotic res. I'm surprised we don't have points in the intelligence necrotic res. This is the kind of point that I would normally take constantly. I love points like this. What is this? Vitality, perfect. Minion damage, minion attack speed, sounds great. So our skills here, they all scale on int, don't they? Click on this. Necrotic damage per point of intelligence, nice. Spirit Plague is 4% damage per point of intelligence. And then a Volatile Zombie. Where are these boys? 4% minion damage per point of intelligence. So because they all scale on intelligence, how are these points? 8 points. 48 divided by 8 is what? 6? God, is it? So this is 6% damage per point. And this node down here is 4% damage per point. So it's 6 or 4 damage, right? 50% more damage. Kind of. But we also get necrotic res out of this. So I think what I'm going to do is put 8 points into Forbidden Knowledge instead. Just to have slightly lower damage, but it'll give me a ton of necrotic res to keep me nice and safe. So I'm going to go ahead and make that change. So what do we have? Health, great. You deal damage, triple below 35% health, sure. So 8 and 2 just to get up to this point, which is 10. Increased damage over time, increased poison damage, poison duration, vitality. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Is there anything in here that we care about? When you use a potion, you have 10% increased cast speed. You know, I might put a point in Elixir of Hunger. This seems like a pretty reasonable thing to have. Some extra life, some extra cast speed, and then like hunger duration. But aside from that, I think these leveling notes look just perfect to me. So let's go like this. So I guess I want to do one more thing before we get started. And maybe this is something that I should have done ahead of time. But, you know, sue me. So I'm going to go hide stuff first. Normal magic, item. I'm going to go hide class requirement, anything that isn't an Acolyte, like this. So we're starting at 5:30. Lock it in. Get him. Get him. The recommendation that's made to me is to take this node up here, this blood aura. But I'm just going to take Forbidden Knowledge. It's 4% increased damage instead of 6% increased damage. So it's slightly less. But it gives me res as well. And I'm just a sucker for nodes like that. Now I need you to remember, chat. Like in last Epoch, like in life, peace is always an option. You can just... It's so crazy how much void damage there is in like the first 20 levels. I feel like my inherent like gamer knowledge after playing video games for years and years and years is like, well, shouldn't like fire damage or cold damage or lightning damage, shouldn't that be like the scariest thing? And then like the weird element should be spookier later on in the game. Nope. I guess not. But I think the damage over time stuff in general is a very good spot, or too underwhelming compared to crit scaling. So there's kind of a lot to say about the difference between those two things. Damage over time could use more damage, could use more support in the game, but I think in general it's a bit stronger than people make it out to be. Because of monoliths. If you're only concerned with arena, then anything that's not crit is probably garbage to you, right? Boop. Because there's a haste shrine. Look at that. And you probably feel that way because there's no like dodge or crit avoid in the arena. I guess there's dodge in the arena. Some monsters have dodge in the arena, but that's like on a monster by monster basis. So in general in the arena, monsters don't really have a modifier on them. Maybe like one rare monster will have dodge, or one rare monster will have like life regeneration or something like that. But for the most part, you know, you're never gonna find like a monster that has crit avoid. Whereas in monoliths, there can be like glancing blows, crit avoid, dodge, all that nasty stuff, right? And all it takes is like one spooky modifier. With this. All it takes is one spooky modifier to take your damage and cut it in half. And that's just not something that happens in the arena, right? Alright, so now that we've killed these guys, this is something that I didn't know for a while, so I want to call it out right now. You can TP without being in a waypoint. So as long as you just open your map up, you just click here and you can travel. It took me like a month to learn that, chat. That's so stupid. I can't imagine. And now we get to see the power of wandering spirits against a boss, right? Because like they don't need to dodge. And the green boys, they also don't need to like walk through an enemy. They can just stand there, they can stack up, they can shoot their little green projectile against the boss and just absolutely annihilate him. I actually did something right there that I feel like I should talk about, just in case we have like some Path of Exile players as well in chat. So in Path of Exile, one of the things that I do very often, I think most people do very often while leveling, is they check the level of the area itself in the top right corner, and they also check like their own level. And in PoE, there's a leveling curve, which means that like if you're within 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of the zone itself, you're getting maximum experience, right? So maybe you've watched someone level in Path of Exile, and they say things like, "Oh, I want to be 3 levels down," or "Hey, I'm 1 level above the area. I'm killing too many monsters." That's the kind of thing that you might hear someone say in Path of Exile. But in Last Epoch, there's actually nothing like that. There's no experience curve. There's no experience penalty. There's no bonus experience. There's nothing like that. So, well, if you're level 25 and you feel like you can go into monoliths, first of all, you're probably not playing hardcore because you're probably going to die. But more importantly, if you walk into monoliths and you start killing monsters, you're going to get an insane amount of experience because you're level 25 and you're in a level 55 zone, right? So that's like kind of one of the big differences between Last Epoch and Path of Exile. Literally the scariest area of the entire game. The only way that this zone could be worse is if the Wingari duo was here. Can you imagine? I guess we can talk about adaptive damage as well. This is kind of like one of the big level up moments in my brain, is realizing how important adaptive damage is. Because like even if you're playing a damage over time skill, like Wandering Spirits or like Spirit Plague, the flat damage of your skill is still scaled by like plus adaptive damage, which is another like big difference between this and Path of Exile. So my base that I'm currently using is garbage because it's my level 1 base, which is probably why I feel like I could use a little more damage right now. This is plus 12 and plus 3 intelligence. Damn. Even this as a white item is like huge over what I currently have. Let's go ahead and buy this thing. Let's do that. Actually, I can show you, right? My Wandering Spirits is 72, and this is 168. So 72, 168. 72, 168. Are staves worth considering early on? Yes, absolutely. Staves are totally worth considering early on. Remember, like, the most important thing about your damage for a long time is how much flat you can get. It's like adaptive this, you know, plus 10 necrotic, plus 10 void damage. Any kind of flat damage is like hugely important. This thing has 12 and it also has 3 intelligence on it. So like it's pretty good. But you're right. I should have looked at the staves there as well. Oh, I have Volatile Zombie already. Oh, could I have been using that for a while?
Yes.
I've never used this thing. What do they do? They just like walk up to the enemy and blow up? Is that good? Is there a reason to use Volatile Zombies instead of just casting Spirit Plague? Just use Spirit Plague instead of spending the time to cast Volatile Zombie? I think you're right about that. What do you think? Do we keep trying to incorporate Volatile Zombie? Because for our third node here, we could either spec into Volatile Zombie, which is what my notes recommend, or we could spec into Transplant, I guess. If we spec into Transplant, we could get 20%? I think it's a 20% kill threshold. Or we could get the Bone Armor nodes, which would give me like a nice chunk of defense if I've used Transplant recently. You think Transplant? I think I'm into it. And I feel like the entire time I've been playing Last Epoch, I've been asking various people, like, what do you think the most dangerous monsters in the game are? And the answer that I get is, there's like a little bit of disparity here and there. One of the answers that wasn't on my list, that was on other people's list, was this monster right here on the ground, the one that I just killed. The big frenzy dinosaurs that bleed on hit. Yeah, they're really spooky, aren't they? And then we'll just keep going. Potions, stuff. So this is how I navigate this zone. I think it's a pretty normal way of navigating it, but if somebody in chat has a different recommendation, feel free to speak up. So what I do is after tagging the waypoint there and getting our quest, I go to the very top left, and then I go across the top to the top right. And this whole zone is like one long rectangle. You can go straight to the left. Do you not need to gather the mission, like going down the stairs right there? You don't need to? Deal. Okay. That's good to know. Does Spirit Plague fall off a bit at some point, or is it this strong all the way? It doesn't fall off. Spirit Plague is absurd. Alright, so here's what we do. Gotta slap this thing, and then I've always heard that time is like a... Most people think time is like a straight line. In reality, time is more like a spherical, timey, wimey, bendy. I don't really know what's going on right here in the storyline. I don't really get it. If you watch these damage numbers here, right? Take a look at the very bottom left-hand corner of my screen. Every time that I cast Spirit Plague, I get a % increased damage over time, which is global, right? Which means it shows up here. So I'm a level 24 character, and I have 74% increased damage over time until I start clicking buttons. And now I have 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1300, 1400% increased damage. So here's a little leveling tip that somebody gave to me, so I'm going to share it with you as well, okay? We're going to go to this area here. This is the top right of this zone. We're going to go back in time. We're going to click on the nugget that's back there. And then instead of going through this time warp portal again, we're going to do something else. So we'll click on this. Bonk. And then where we want to be is back at the waypoint. So we're going to just open up our map. We'll click here. Somewhere else. It doesn't really matter where else you go. But we're going to go somewhere else. We're going to open up the map again, and then we're going to go back to this place. And it's going to put us at the waypoint where we want to be. So it saved us a loading screen, and it also saved us a bunch of walking. So now we just kind of walk forward. Let's go over here. Click on this thing. I have 2 points. Yeah, but I'm lazy. Toxic transmission. So now every time we click Spirit Plague, we're applying 2 poisons. That's pretty good. In before Spirit Plague gets nerfed to the ground on Friday. We've actually had devs in chat while we were making jokes about how strong Spirit Plague is. And like, it is strong. It's a really good skill. But the devs have said that they don't feel like it's too strong. They don't feel like it's a, you know, abusively strong. It's just like not really on their list of things that they want to nerf for any particular reason. So cool. They like the power level of it. Or at the very least, they don't think it's in a bad spot. Like, okay, you got it, coach. We are going to be I guess we could be a Necromancer. But listen, here's the thing, ready? This is the like the build guide, quote unquote, that I'm following right now. We have 30 points in Lich, and we have 0 points in Necromancer. So you could take this leveling and do it either way. Like, you could level a Necromancer this way, you could level a Lich this way. I'm gonna spec into Lich because Lich also gives you damage leeches health. If you spec into Necromancer, you'd have +1 this, +1 that, and minions deal 50% increased damage. But just for the purpose of leveling, you could do this either way, and you would still level with Wandering Spirits and Spirit Plague. So for me, I'm just gonna spec into Lich because if I come to softcore later on, I want a Lich that I can play. As long as we're talking about resistance, I'm just gonna keep rambling about Path of Exile as well. So, Path of Exile, it's really, really important to cap your resistances there. Like, even if you're walking around with 74 fire res instead of 75, you're kind of just, like, hoping to die, right? Because you take a lot of damage. In Last Epoch, that's just not the case. So going from 75 to 74 res in Last Epoch is the same as going from 0 to -1 in PoE. Not nearly as punishing. In fact, you'll oftentimes see like end game builds in Last Epoch that, yeah, maybe they kind of skimp on fire res, maybe they kind of skimp on cold res. Like, yeah, you know, ideally you'd like to fix that. We could start speccing into like Reaper form and stuff, but I kind of want to keep this character generic. And like, you could be a Necromancer, you could be something else. So instead of speccing into these nodes over here, I don't think I'm going to spec into anything at all. I'm just going to have these first 3 points up here. So let's go kill threshold like that, and then we'll just keep moving. Is there any Lich builds without Reaper form that is fast and tanky enough for smooth and powered mono farming, or is Reaper form too mandatory? I'm going to phrase your question in a different way, okay? I think the answer is no, but I want to phrase your question in a different way. If you weren't taking Reaper form, what would you take instead? Because like, there's only so much utility, right? So you're going to have a main damaging skill. So every time you walk up to a monster, you're going to use your main damaging skill, right? Did I go the wrong way? Oh my god, I think I went the wrong way. No. Oh well, I think I'm the wrong way. So when you walk up to a monster, you're going to use like your main damaging skill, right? Or maybe you have an AoE clear skill and then also a single target skill. And maybe you have a defensive ability, or like maybe like a buff or a debuff that you cast. Maybe you like spec into like a main skill as well. But like when I'm fighting a monster, I'm probably only using one skill, right? I'm just like spamming my Spirit Plague as much as possible like this. So like, for example, if I wanted to spec into... here we go. If I wanted to spec into Volatile Zombie, well, to make use of Volatile Zombie, I would have to stand here and like summon a bunch of Volatile Zombies, right? And every time that I'm using my character's animation to do one thing, I'm not using it to do a different thing. So there's kind of a hard cap on like how many like damaging abilities you can spec into, unless one skill is proccing another skill on hit, for example. So like, if you don't want to use Reaper form and you're playing a Lich, what do you want to spec into instead? You don't actually know? I think that if you approach it like that, and you try to ask yourself that question, I don't think you're going to find anything other than Reaper form. So we talked about the optional side quests, because like I want to skip as many of the optional side quests as possible. This right here in the Rustlands, this is the one area that you can skip. If you go in there, there's a unique monster who always drops the same relic. He drops a relic that gives you crit chance with fizz spells, damage with fizz spells, cast speed with fizz spells. So like if you're playing a fizz spell, yeah, maybe you want to go in there. It's like 100% increased damage. We've got a gold ring over here. Now that's an excellent thing to talk about. So there's a couple base types as you're leveling up that have a lot of resistance baked into them. One of the most notable ones is this pair of gloves that I have here. So right after you get your mastery for the first time, I was lucky enough to find these at the vendor, but I probably should have mentioned it. Level 25, right around the time when you get your mastery for the first time. You will need necrotic resistance, because you're about to walk into a zone that has a whole bunch of necrotic damage. And like, funny enough, there's a pair of gloves that kind of perfectly caters to that. It's called these Outcast Gloves. Fortunately enough, we already have those. So a gold ring is also a level 25 item. And when I was doing races with Vision GL, the weekend sprints, weekend races that guy hosts. I like made my loot filter for that to make sure that I had all the right stuff, because I kind of treated it like a race, kind of like a PoE race. But you know, once you get level 25, gambling on some gold rings, or just like acquiring gold rings as quickly as possible, it's a pretty good place to be. I kind of like it. This ring has movement speed and life. Let's take that off. Let's put a gold ring on instead. So this is capping our lightning. It's pretty nuts. Gives us some fizz res as well. And you know what? I might even put some extra fizz res on this. Maybe like this. Sure. Yeah, you got it, coach. All right. Almost capped fizz res. That's really good. You know what? I guess this is relevant to hardcore and softcore, but let's talk about this. So the area that we just did, like the Moonlight Shrine, getting both the moon pieces, doing Lagan's Isle, I think level 55 monoliths are actually less difficult than Lagan's Isle. And then you can use those to like gear up as well. So like you don't actually need to finish the campaign of Last Epoch before you walk into, you know, doing endgame content, doing the monolith system. I think it's like a pretty reasonable thing to spend your time doing. Like you'll still want to go back and kill Lagan at some point, because like you get skill points for it. And then in next patch, in patch 0.8.3, the one that's coming out on Friday, they're going to add more endgame, right? So there's going to, or sorry, they're going to add more storyline. So instead of the storyline ending with Lagan, the storyline's going to end with whatever the hell comes after that. So even then, I think the same is going to stay true. That like, you know, before going to Lagan's Isle, if you just want to change a pace, or if you just want to go do monoliths, or if you want to not put up with all the crusty crustaceans, you can just go do your level 55 monolith instead. We are a level 49 character. I think we've skipped all the optional quests, which means like there's like a little bit of gold, a little bit of experience that we didn't get, but we got all of our skill points for like the current storyline in the game. Remember, this is patch 8.2, not 8.3. We do have all of our idle slots unlocked as well. We beat Lagan, and we are ready to walk into our level 55 monolith. So this was a softcore solo, just because I want to have a character available in softcore in case I want to do something with this character later on. But I think for the time being, that's going to be the end of this. When I advertised doing this leveling thing, I made like a little leveling post about it as well. If you haven't already seen that, let's go ahead and link it. It's like !leveling, because we're going to be doing this for the next 4 days as well. Now that we've done this for today, we're probably just going to go back to my Ignite Cinderstrike character and go probably mess around doing arena for the rest of the night, because that's kind of been fun. So yeah, I think that about covers it. Let's take a tiny little break, because I haven't stood up in a while. We've done about 3.5 hours at this point. So let me go grab some tea for myself, and then when I get back, we'll jump onto the Ignite Cinderstriker and see if we can kill that character off, hopefully. Thanks for being here. Be right back.